Hey everyone, this is a clip from a recent episode of the Men of Steel podcast where we talk about Superman and Superman adjacent topics. If you enjoy this clip, check out the podcast. You can find it at certainpov.com or wherever you get your shows. All right, so let's just start with issue 1. So issue 1, we open with what I think is a scene that I took for granted for a long time, which is them trying to save their satellite, which is very clearly supposed to be a nod to the satellite headquarters of the Justice League. Like, this is a Justice League homage that is very much built on like the Bronze Age team. Like, we've got pretty much everyone corresponds to like these like late 70s sort of archetypes. And like I said, it really matches up to what's called the satellite era for the Justice League. Hyperion is trying to hold back the satellite from crashing into the Earth. And I think that panel is a really important thing, because I think that this comic relies on us being like, all right, this is the Justice League, but it's in the Marvel universe still. Like, it's not 616, but it's still Marvel Comics. And Marvel Comics have always had a lower power scale than DC until you get into the big crazy cosmic stuff, in which, you know, like the Silver Surfers and all that. Like, but when we're talking about heroes in the terrestrial form, like Thor has some really crazy feats, but like, typically speaking, isn't quite cracking the level of Superman. Like, the tiers of how we express everything is not quite as like, yeah, he can move a planet. Like, if Hyperion was the Silver Age Superman, this story probably wouldn't be able to happen. Like, it still requires the characters to have limitations. Like, that's kind of the blood of Marvel Comics. And so to open with Hyperion, you know, very much this world Superman, still unable to stop certain levels of disasters. Like, this satellite headquarters of theirs is still so big and so heavy and has so much momentum, he's not going to be able to do it. Like, and I think that's a very important sequence just to establish, like, yes, this is the Justice League, but they are not omnipotent in this setting.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he was really struggling. And he's having that internal monologue. Yeah.
Yeah, when I was making like notes of like what to talk about on the podcast, like that was one of the first things I put down for issue 1.
Yeah, I mean, the comic in general, for all the characters, they'll go through and like highlight limitations that they have that their DC counterparts don't. But I think it's just important to note right off the bat, like, no one is so strong that they can move a planet on this team. Like, Hyperion is Superman for all intents and purposes, but even he's not going to be able to completely, you know, reshape the map if he wanted to.
Yeah, no flying around the world, turning back time here.
Yep.
Right, exactly.
It could still happen.
Not with this Hyperion. So we get this whole sequence where he saves the satellite from actually being destroyed on impact, and it crashes into the water. They note that he has so much heat on his body from re-entry into Earth's atmosphere that he's actually boiling the water around him. Amphibian, who is their Aquaman equivalent, comes and sort of like corresponds with him, and then those two, along with Whizzer, which is their Flash equivalent, and Dr. Spectrum, who is their Green Lantern, collectively pull it out of the water enough so that they can salvage equipment and everything. But that satellite is effectively over. Like, this is a very clear, like, yes, this is based on the satellite era version of the Justice League, but their resources are not the way that it used to be. And then we cut to them. Well, they do a lot of reconnaissance, and so we get to sort of see the state of the world, and it's fucked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's beyond fucked, Case.
Yeah. Yeah, so we don't have a full set of details at this point yet, but they travel around and we get to see things like looting, and we get to have commentary about those kind of elements. We get to see the regular people just being terrified of them, and we start to sort of establish the personalities of all these types. Like, at this point, Cap and Hawk, although for the rest of the book he's going to be going by Blue Eagle, is very much this sort of like Law and Order type character. Like, you know, they're all very clearly based on their DC analogs. Like, their personalities are like that, but there are subtle differences on it all. You know, we get to see that Nuke, who is sort of a Firestorm XP, like in for the purposes of the book, but more directly, he's just I shoot energy blast kind of guy. Is the young hothead in the team, and like literally like will just like snap and like shoot energy blasts at like ordinary civilians when they like shoot at him. So we get to see sort of the range of maturity for some of these characters. We get to see limitations, or, you know, we do a good job of like establishing like all the different members. Like we get Nighthawk, Golden Archer, Lady Lark, and Tom Thumb stopping like a city from basically exploding because of a gas leak, or like a gas line explosion that's like cascading through like along this like pipe that's just getting worse and worse and worse, and they like shut it down at one point so that it does not go into the city and destroy it all. But all the work that they're doing, there's only so much they can do. Like, again, they're not omnipotent. They can't stop everything.
Their point, is to stop it from going much, much worse. It's like they say later on.
Right.
I think it was Tom Thumb was like, we stopped it from getting out of control. We did what we can do. We're not firefighters.
Yeah. So basically we're getting groups of 4 at this point to sort of set up the starting 12 of the team. And they go into what is effectively the Detroit, like, or the Happy Harbor location for the Justice League, like the original base of the Justice League, just reminding us that, like, yes, this is still the Justice League, guys. Like, they come together and we get the exposition. I also like that we start to establish the amount of bureaucracy that the squadron has. Like, they've got like meeting rules, they've got minutes, they've got like, as soon as the meeting starts, like, mask off everyone, like as like part of a policy within the group, which I think is like a nice touch. Like, there's this element of them questioning like if they were just kind of playing hero up until this point, which includes like having all this like pageantry like that goes into like, yeah, we're a formal club and we're gonna have votes and we're gonna have, you know, officers, and we're gonna have like someone who's taking meeting minutes, and it feels like a lot of that doesn't go away. Like, they don't like completely fundamentally change as people, but it does certainly show off that there is a certain element of what the way that they had been operating. A lot of it was a game. They talk about past fights with supervillains and past like terrible situations as being, well, we've gotten through it, everything is fine. But now we're looking at a world that is literally starving. Like, there are famines all over because supply lines are cut. There's a big Bronze Age collapse kind of vibe going on here, if that makes sense to anyone. All the resources are gone. All the things that people had relied on are broken. All the lines of communication are screwed up. Like, nothing is fundamentally destroyed. But because the systems that we had used to like operate have been disrupted, now all of a sudden there's huge suffering literally worldwide.
Sounds very familiar. Like, we're kind of going through something like this right now, actually.
Yeah, it feels very prescient right now in 2022. And we also find out a bit more about why. So we establish that Kyle Richmond, who is Nighthawk, who is their Batman.
That's his name. There you go.
Had become president of the United States. Again, this is the 80s, but it's a timeless story.
Yeah, and like a landslide too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, he was he's the 8th richest man in the world. This figure of incredible charisma and wealth that people just like wanted to put their interest in. And he fucks up terribly. I mean, it's not his fault, but he does fuck up terribly.
It's not his fault. Yeah.
Yeah. So the Overmind, who is an old Fantastic Four villain, who is, he's an Eternal.
Wait, he's Fantastic Four?
The Overmind is, yeah. Well, or at least that's where he first shows up. So he was a Fantastic Four villain. He is an Eternal, but he, you know, the Unimind concept where the Eternal minds like link up with each other. Like, on his world, he became like the collective mind of his entire race, and has gone on to like try to conquer worlds, which is actually an Easter egg because the only person he can't control is Hyperion. Because Mark Gruenwald doesn't go into all of it in this book, but he would continue to write these characters for several years after the series. Like, for one thing, there are later Squadron Supreme stories, and then the characters become regulars in Quasar, which was a Mark Gruenwald book. So we get to find out actually quite a bit about all of these characters, and like more about like their backstories and more about like secrets that even they're not aware of. Like, Hyperion's not aware of a lot of his origins in this book, and we find out more when he comes to 616. So Overmind takes over the world, or rather, he takes over Kyle Richmond, who then uses him to take over the U.S., and then uses the U.S. to take over the rest of the world, and then starts trying to fire off nukes into space to take over alien worlds. But that's when the Squadron Supreme apparently got their shit together, mostly through Hyperion, and saved the day. But things are bad. The Wizard ran around the world to find out what was going on and finds most of the world is just in complete shambles. And they're kind of left to be like, all right, so what do we do? And this is where it gets kind of interesting because so first of all, we immediately get this like tie-in to like the bigger Marvel stuff with Power Princess, who is their Wonder Woman type, revealing that her equivalent to Themyscira is apparently Adelon. Like she's apparently an Inhuman.
Wait, say it again?
So she says that her utopian island is a bunch of humans that were modified by the Kree. So she's apparently an Inhuman from this reality. So like Black Bolt and all those, which I
not just Amazonian, she's Inhuman too.
Right, instead of in this reality. And then Hyperion kind of talks about how like he had a backstory like what you would expect for Superman. He was raised by like, good common people who like taught him to like not interfere too much. And now looking at this world that's like falling apart, they're like, maybe we should have interfered because like when we didn't, the world was taken over by an alien, psychic entity that like messed up everything. And now the world is in a really bad spot. And maybe we shouldn't just like resume the status quo. Maybe we need to actually step in and really like make it a utopia the way that Zarda, Power Princess, the way her society is from, like really like solve these problems. And so Nighthawk's immediately like, hey guys, that's kind of fucked up, right? we shouldn't do that. That seems like it's going to be a problem if we try to take over the world and make it nice and then just tell everyone like, hey, it's nice now. But they have a vote and everyone votes for Utopia except for Nighthawk and Amphibian. And Amphibion's like, well, I see how this is going. I guess I'm with you guys. And Nighthawk's like, no, no, I'm leaving. As you would expect the Batman to do, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, Batman would try to talk everybody out of it, make them see reason. Well,
he tries, and then they yell at him. And in fact, like a bunch of them are like, well, specifically Nuke, because Nuke's a dick. Is like very upset, and Hyperion's like, hey, kid, shut up. Like, this is like the best man on the planet. Like we might disagree with him, but he's still Batman. He's still the best guy.
He's not Batman. He's Nighthawk.
Right.
And in fairness to the Squadron, they should at the very least try to unfuck the world.
Remember, if you like the clip, after you're done liking and subscribing, check out certainpov.com where you can find more episodes of the show as well as a ton of other great shows.